Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. I'm Anna Wells, and with me today are Jeff Renke and Andy Zoll. And we're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News. We each have about 15 years of experience covering the industry of manufacturing. Every week we cover the 5 biggest stories, and we talk about the implications that those stories have on the industry moving forward. If you can, please like, subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast, give us a review if you can, positive, please, on whatever platform you use. And finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can do so with email the podcast in the subject line. Jeff, Anna, or Andy at IEN.com. We are live some Fridays at 1:30, some Fridays at other times, like today. You can subscribe on YouTube at IEN Magazine to get this sent to your inbox when we start. Before we get going, we're going to start with a word from our sponsor, Red Zone.
Manufacturers are facing extraordinary challenges today. With labor shortages, supply chain disruptions, and a changing workforce, complex industrial technology doesn't cut it on the front line. What's needed is a new way of working that will not only meet throughput goals, but change the shop floor culture to one of winning, where every worker feels they play a part in achieving the company's goals for success. What's needed is Red Zone, the connected workforce solution.
All right, Red Zone's connected workforce software solution enables manufacturers to empower frontline teams in production, maintenance, and quality to contribute their full potential and achieve company goals around productivity and throughput. Red Zone software enables manufacturers, both big and small, to boost their plant's productivity, increase employee engagement, and lower turnover. Thanks, Red Zone. All right, I'm going to kick it off to Andy, who's going to walk us through our 5th most popular story of the week. Andy.
Playing the role of moderator this week a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yes. Our number 5 story of the week, plant-based meat company is spoiling. Beyond Meat has had a rough go of it lately. Sales dropped last year and revenue fell, along with restaurant demand early this year. So as a result, the company slashed prices. It sold more product, but revenue still fell. And as the company was preparing to share its second quarter results, analysts were projecting it to fall even further. John Baumgartner, an analyst, told Reuters that part of the problem was product adoption. The initial excitement around Beyond Meat has passed, and it needs more product innovation and better tasting products, he says, to keep that momentum going. Now, it's had product tests at McDonald's, KFC, Taco Bell, and Panda Express that didn't evolve into a broader launch. And Dunkin', Hardee's, and A&W have already discontinued their lines of Beyond. Inflation and supply chain problems also pose threats. The company hopes to be able to weather the storm and rebound before it becomes just another flash in the pan, it says here. So I wasn't here for the, what was it, a KFC little taste test you guys did? I missed that one somehow, so I will have to defer to you guys for your Beyond Meat takes.
Ooh, I have a take.
Go ahead.
So I have been a vegetarian for 25 years almost, which is hard to even imagine. But one thing I've learned in that time is that vegetarians, I think, tend to have a pretty diverse set of reasons as for why they are vegetarians. Some, it's a moral choice. Sometimes it has to do with sustainability. Some people are grossed out by meat. Anyway, I think the industry widely for a very long time targeted vegetarians as if they were just looking for health food at all times, like they just wanted to be healthier. I don't think that that's accurate. And so I can't speak for this entire community, but I will say that when companies started to put some money into meat alternatives and sort of get creative, it was exciting for me personally, because I can't tell you how many like mushy, tasteless black bean burgers I've had in my life just because that was the only option, you know? And so, like, I think that it's important that suddenly the industry, the food industry, is understanding that, you know, like 10% of Americans identify as vegan or vegetarian. They have wallets too, right? Like, this is important sector to target. That being said, the hype around this industry has been ridiculous. And I think it's, you know, it's exciting that they're making a better tasting veggie burger, and I actually really like Beyond Burgers, but they're expensive, first of all, and I don't buy them often for that reason. I think they also emerged during this strange time where everyone and their brother in the food industry decided that they needed to go develop a plant-based division. There's a ton of competition out right now, and these companies are trying to scale, and they're spending a ton of money on R&D. They're spending a ton of money on marketing. They have inconsistent distribution, as you mentioned, like they're working these rollouts with all these restaurants. Like that takes a lot of resources, right? So I feel like you can look at this story and think like nobody wants this product, that's why it's failing. I don't think that it's true. That's true. I think it's a little bit more complex than that. People are cutting back on their grocery spending right now because of inflation. I know that ingredient supplies are people are losing their suppliers and they're having to spend more to get ingredients that they used to have a more consistent supply of. There's a lot of factors that are going into making this specifically a very hard market to be in for Beyond right now. And as you mentioned, they are selling more product, but I just think that the deck seems to be stacked against them right now. They probably have very high operating costs. So, if you look at what they're saying too, they're blaming inflation, they're blaming recession fears, they're blaming interest rates, and I think that is largely true. Obviously, they have some kinks to work out with their rollout, but I don't think that this speaks exactly to a market issue for Beyond, rather more business variables that are very challenging for every company.
I mean, I would agree with a lot of that. Starting with the thing that we can sometimes overlook when we're looking at a food product is how does it actually taste? Mm-hmm. I think what I saw online is people are a little bit all over the board when it comes to Beyond. Now, I've had the Beyond Burger, mm-hmm. I've had the Beyond Brat.
Yeah.
I think they taste good, but they do not taste like what they're supposedly replacing. If you've had a burger, if you've had a brat, mm-hmm. these things are not close, in my opinion.
Right.
Now, I can still put these things on a bun and throw a bunch of onions and other mm-hmm. condiments on them, and they taste great, but it's not the same. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the pieces of research that Beyond put out there is they felt that their market, 70% of their market could potentially be people who are looking to reduce how much meat they're eating.
Right, yep.
And I can appreciate that, but if I'm looking to reduce the amount of red meat that I'm eating, I don't know. Chicken or fish is a lot more appealing than a Beyond product to me as a meat eater, okay? So I think that's one thing that I don't know if they paid enough attention to that, how different it really is. I think if you're a vegetarian and you haven't had this stuff for however long, yeah, it probably tastes, however you remember it tasting, it's probably pretty similar, I'm guessing.
My husband says this to me too. He's like, this does not taste, you just don't remember.
It doesn't.
Like, all right.
Well, like when we had the chicken from KFC, was that Beyond?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It tasted good, but it did not taste like chicken. Mm-hmm. It tasted like a different type of, I don't know, deep fried vegetable or something like that. But we had people in here too who hadn't had chicken in a while, and they thought it was great.
Yeah.
So I think that presents a very tough competitive situation for Beyond. The other thing is, and you touched on it, everybody's getting into this. I mean,
mm-hmm.
we think of Beyond and Impossible as the two big ones, but then you've got people like Nestle, Kellogg's, other big food companies that are getting into this. Kellogg's in particular is putting a lot of resources into their Morningstar Farms line. Mm-hmm. We talked about that, and they're restructuring. We think of Kellogg's as cereal. Well, now they're getting into all these other areas, and they're pumping a ton of resources into it. Combine that with the fact that, like you said, only 10% of the consumer base is a vegetarian vegan by nature. So everybody else is already looking beyond that. So even though this is an interesting alternative, it's I think there's just, like you kind of alluded to, Anna, there's just a lot of market factors that came into play here.
Mm-hmm.
So this report came out just kind of projecting what everyone thought was going to happen in their earnings report. So that report has since come out, and it's also come with layoffs. They say they're going to reduce their workforce 4%, which is about 40 jobs, to save about $8 million annually. So revenue was down, but only 1.6%. The company also noted that it saw its second largest quarter ever in terms of net revenues, and solid progress on reducing some operating and manufacturing conversion costs. Its CEO said that for the balance of the year, they're focused on intensifying OPEX and manufacturing cost reductions, and some other sort of activities here, probably market activities across our global strategic partners, a lot of earnings report jargon that we're all quite familiar with. They say they hope to emerge from the current economic climate leaner and stronger, and of course the current economic climate is well, nobody's really sure what's going on with that right now, so
right.
That remains to be seen. But whatever it is, they want to be well positioned for the next chapter of growth, which is, sounds familiar if you've read earnings reports from companies that maybe aren't doing so hot lately. So We'll have to.
Oh, it's only up from here.
Yeah, we'll
So that's
have
reassuring.
to see how their focus turns out.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too that Jeff brought up about, targeting people who are trying to reduce their meat consumption. I wonder how much the pricing factors right now demotivates that crowd, right? Like maybe if it's easier or it's more cost effective to do it, they will. But when prices are up right now, maybe that's something that people table.
Well, it was interesting too because like with the brats, I bought those for my wife and put them on there, and again, they tasted fine, just not like the horrible, combination of grease and fat that is a brat. I mean, it's not the same. But they were expensive, and I didn't actually buy them until they went on sale. They talked about the price reduction. That was kind of part of it that ate into their profits this quarter.
Yeah.
I sort of contributed to that, I guess.
Yeah.
And do you know that when I had the Beyond Burger, that was only the second time I ordered a burger that was not meat? Do you remember the first time that I had to do that?
I do. Because you lost a bet.
I did lose a bet.
And I won that bet, Jeff. I remember.
I do remember having to choke down whatever that god-awful patty was at the burger place.
Yep.
Had I known I was doing this podcast and this story, I think I might have stopped for a Beyond breakfast patty or something this morning because I feel a little left out.
You've not had any of it?
No.
Oh, we're gonna.
I'm not morally opposed. I just
yeah.
I just haven't. I've certainly had the opportunity. I've just never capitalized on
Let's
it.
have a barbecue right now
sure.
in the studio.
Yeah, right now.
Where does the smoke go?
Sounds
I
awesome.
don't.
Get on it, production people.
Yeah.
Just cut a hole in the ceiling.
There we go.
Bring the grill in.
All right.
Bring the grill in.
Our fourth most popular story this week: Rivian sounds alarm on EV rebate changes. Senate Democrats last week announced legislation, a sweeping package that has been fought over for years now since they took control of Congress. It basically aims to combat climate change and rising healthcare costs, among a wide variety of other things. One of those is that it would extend the nation's long-standing $7,500 credit designed to encourage purchases of electric vehicles. But there's a catch. According to the Wall Street Journal, vehicles sold for more than $80,000 would no longer be eligible, nor would buyers with household incomes of either $150,000 or $300,000 for married couples. Rivian's vehicles start below that mark, but added features, the company says, would quickly push most of its sales well beyond that threshold. The bill would also eliminate the $200,000 vehicle cap. So right now, Tesla and General Motors are the two companies that have sold more than 200,000 EVs. They are not eligible for that rebate anymore. This would make them eligible once again, bring that cost down. Rivian executives say the changes could prevent some buyers from going electric and asked for a 2-year transition window to the new program. The company eventually plans to offer a more affordable model that would qualify for that rebate, but it says it needs continued growth to ensure it can make those investments. Where do you stand on the high-end EV market getting $7,500 rebates for vehicle purchases?
I think I know where you stand on it. I don't know. I think there's quite a few automakers that are going to be happy about the extension of the EV tax credit because, as you mentioned, GM and Tesla have both been effectively eliminated from that program for a while. And they have been lobbying intensively for that change for years, and so I almost wonder if for them the benefit of these changes are going to really outweigh some of the restrictions that they're putting on. You can see why they want this credit extended. They've laid a lot of groundwork in developing these EVs. They've also done a lot in terms of generating market acceptance. Like if you look at what Tesla has done for buy-in of EVs, they've done a lot, and that's going to help other automakers in the end, right? So I can see why Tesla's like, well, hey, wait a second, why are we not included anymore? And also like GM, like they wasted a lot of, I shouldn't say wasted, but like they used up a lot of their credit on their market entry vehicles like the Bolt and the Volt, which were not as profitable for them. So as they scale, and then they also have this additional motivator for people to buy, the payback of that credit is arguably much better as they scale, right? So for them too, I think they feel like, hey, we broke some ground here and now we're not getting our fair share of this. So I understand why they feel like they're entitled to that. As far as the the stipulations on higher earners. We've seen the data around EV buyers and prospective buyers, and we know that people who have higher household incomes are more interested in EVs, obviously because they're hitting the market at a little bit higher price point, though that is starting to come down already, we're seeing, to be more on par with a traditional vehicle. But if you look at the income caps, and we're probably talking AGI here, I'm assuming, like 300K or more for a married couple, that applies to 4% of the U.S. population. I mean, you really have a lot of market to work with there. I know that they're mad about the $80,000 overall cost of the vehicle thing, and that I feel like maybe with some lobbying that could be massaged or amended or something in a way. The buffer, I don't know what the point of that is exactly. They just want to get some sales in quick and then be kneecapped. I'm not sure.
Well, they're opening a new factory to produce this lower cost vehicle, so that might get them.
Yep.
That might. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that might get them a nice little bridge to when that thing is almost ready to open. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I can see why they're frustrated. And to be honest with you, if the U.S. federal government is going to put all these restrictions on what automakers can produce and sell and what Americans can buy, I kind of don't understand why they're not just full force boosting the market in a way that it seems to me. I mean, since when have we shied away from giving wealthy people subsidies and tax breaks? It's not exactly something that America doesn't do. So I don't know. I just if it were me, open the doors, make this as widespread as you can to improve adoption, because it's not it's working against other automakers now. All the automakers are doing this, right? You're not putting one in a corner, choosing winners and losers. You already did that. You already made that choice on making a certain percentage of these fleets have to be EV. So it's my opinion that they should just do more, but that's not my choice, right?
But it could be. This is your platform, Anna.
I'm going to run for office. I'm going to run for the office, which is right over here. And my office is right around the corner. Yep. Walk there, probably.
To hide from all the feedback you're going to get from this. No, like a lot of legislative actions, I think they got half of it right, or they got some of it right. I think these caps they put on are interesting. 80 grand is a real interesting number, because if you look at the Rivian options, or the Rivian models that they have out and their price points, the absolute base gets you under 80. If you put anything extra on there, you're way over that. So that number, I think Rivian, reading between the lines here a little bit, I think that was intentional in some respects. If you've got some of these other automakers really lobbying for this legislation. I don't like the caps on income for a couple of reasons. Number one, $300,000 for a household income. That's one thing here in Wisconsin. That means a lot. That means different things in New York and San Francisco.
Totally.
So yeah. I don't like those numbers. The other thing is we want to encourage everybody to get EVs, regardless of about how you feel about it or the environmental elements, all that. The writing's on the wall. The government wants it. The automakers want it. This is where we're trending. So why would we want to inhibit somebody who is willing to plunk down $110,000 for a Lucid Air? We want them to do that, because that money, not only does it get more EVs out there, but it also generates the funding that these companies need in order to develop the next innovative product, or whatever the next iteration of these electric vehicles are. They need the funding to do it. So why would we want to inhibit that or not encourage it in any way, shape, or form? The part of the legislation that is great is extending these caps in terms of when those EV credits go away. I think that's great. It should be getting rid of it. I think it's good. We talked about the Nissan Leaf going away. Well, Nissan maybe could use a lot of that incentive that comes from purchasing an EV to develop other models.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the thing that leads to the thing. Again, why would we want to limit that? So, again, they're trying. They got halfway there, but definitely got in their own way. And I think there is some influence, again, in setting some of those benchmarks to potentially take out some of the higher end EV players here.
This bill has an interesting history, as we touched on here. So I'm curious about not only the process of crafting it as a whole, but the process of crafting this particular provision. I'm interested in what went into that. I'm not sure we'll ever know. But I'm kind of with you guys on this. If they want to lift, just keep the incentives very broadly, they probably should be doing more to incentivize electric vehicle purchases. So I don't know why we have to means test everything here.
The thing that's interesting is actually, Rivian right now, they're talking about 3 vehicles, right? They got the truck, which definitely is not going to, no truck is going to probably fall within this price point. It's going to be more than 80 to start out with. The SUV, which they're still sort of figuring out, the base model is around 70. You can go from there. But the delivery vehicle, like the stuff they're making for Amazon, the ones that they've delivered for Amazon, those are actually well below this cap. MSRP on those starts at about 60. So it is kind of interesting that those would be the ones that actually would, under the current provisions, still qualify for that tax credit. So,
interesting.
yeah.
So we've all agreed that tax breaks for the rich is the podcast platform.
If it
like where this is going.
If it switches from EVs to EVs from gas, I think we're okay with that.
Yeah, I think
tax breaks for the rich if it benefits the environment. How about that?
I'm with you. I am.
To have to benefit the environment.
Jeff.
Oh, sorry.
Get out of here.
Sorry.
I should also mention that this, like everything in D.C. right now, it has to walk a very fine line. So this is not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll have to see what happens to the bill overall and maybe to particular provisions as they move forward. All right, our third most popular story. Hershey warns it can't meet Halloween demand. The Mr. Goodbar and Crackle maker is already anticipating supply to fall short for the fall holiday. The reason is that Americans still are apparently eating more candy than usual. Because Hershey uses the same production lines for seasonal goods as it does for year-round products, a bottleneck is on its way. The company's CEO says it made a tough decision to prioritize everyday on-shelf availability rather than seasonal availability for Halloween candy. High prices for dairy and a lack of available ingredients are also hampering the company, and many of the problems, according to executives, stem from the war in Ukraine. How will you guys weather the chocolate shortage?
I'm going to say one thing right now, Hershey's. If this somehow impacts production and availability of Reese's Pieces or peanut butter cups, heads will roll. Just want to put that out there.
If it has to be shaped like a pumpkin for you to eat it, the Reese's? Okay.
No, not at all. But those, they got to be there.
They have more peanut butter in them. They're better in all regards. So
absolutely, especially the peanut butter ones that we tried. I still can't find more of those.
Yeah, those are good.
The ideal formula is the little foil wrapped ones. That's the perfect ratio of chocolate to peanut butter. I know they're smaller, but you can just eat more of them, and that resolves that problem.
Well done. Yeah, that's
why they pay me the big bucks
right there.
Yep.
No, I think Hershey. It's interesting. I think they're facing a number of different cost-related challenges here, and they all do relate to production. Surprisingly, we look at dairy prices. When you look at milk, is up about 16%. Butter up about 16% as well in the past year. Anybody who's buying groceries has experienced those. I didn't realize milk was on average that much more. But obviously that's going to impact a company like Hershey's and when the products they're putting out. The other thing is we talked about a Hershey plant a couple months ago that was looking to unionize. Right now there's 7 main manufacturing facilities in the U.S. Only 2 of them have unions. But as we cover these trends, all these workers, especially in food processing, food manufacturing, they're wanting to get paid. They put their time in, especially over the last year and a half, 2 years when everybody else was shut down. You have to think, because in one part you're thinking, well, if you need more product out there, just increase production, make more stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, if the ingredients are going up and then you're potentially paying workers more because either they're unionizing and getting together collectively to negotiate labor rates, or the fact that they just want to get paid better, I think some of those things are definitely impacting Hershey's decisions here, even though Halloween has got to be just like a cash cow for them.
For sure, yeah. Well, and it sounds like they would have to add lines, based on what they're saying is that they're using the same lines for this type of production. They've been balancing that in the past and are not able to do so now. Recently we talked about how some businesses were discovering that assumptions they made about pandemic-specific demand becoming permanent, like a new normal, were kind of slapped down with reality that not much had changed in their industry in the end. Amy's Kitchen we talked about, opening up a new plant and then having to shutter it within a year because people started to go back out. They started to eat at restaurants again. The candy industry, with Hershey kind of contending here that candy consumption has still been up since 2020 with no signs of changing. I guess if you can suffer through like the daily onslaught of horrible, outrageous, and tragic events in the news cycle without a vice of any kind, then I'd like to know like what you're doing. Like, I can just see like people just like sadly like eating peanut butter cups on their couch every night as I watch the news.
Booze or candy, right?
Booze or candy, right?
Band name.
And I also wonder too, like special occasion candy. Like I don't know about you guys, but like it seemed like during Halloween the last 2 years, my neighborhood like just pulled out all the stops. I think because everyone feels bad about like the pandemic and how terrible it's been for little kids. Like Easter baskets are getting bigger in my family. Like Christmas stockings, Halloween, like everything is just like on a grander scale. I think because we're like, we are so sorry that you were. Got to wear a mask to school every day. I'm like, can't see your friends. I don't know. You had to quit swimming. I feel like grandparents and parents like trying to make up for the pandemic. Like that's real, you know, like that's really happening. I don't know how long that lasts, right? Like, does it last forever?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, like it seems like Hershey is maybe hedging their bet a little bit that this demand spike, you know, like maybe they're riding it out to just see if it's permanent versus like making a snap decision to add production when we don't know what the long-term scope of this will be. You know, some, as we mentioned in the case of Amy's, they really paid the price when these pandemic trends were determined to be temporary. And so in my opinion, you know, Hershey is maybe just trying to take a more conservative approach. And if that means like leaving some business on the table, because of that, maybe that helps them down the road when they didn't potentially overexpand to meet a demand that's not there forever.
According to my unofficial, unscientific research done by me, 75% of all candy is purchased by grandparents for grandchildren.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. Like,
yeah, that does not stop. That just keeps going. You're just at the genesis of that journey right there.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
I eat a lot of the kids' candy.
Yeah. What I do is I'm like, here's a piece, and then I like hide it, and then just wait for them to forget about it.
You are better than me because I just ate it. That was me hiding it.
That's hiding. That's fine.
Counts.
That hypothetical of just eating chocolates on the couch just to get by on the weeknights, that's may have hit a little close to home.
Sorry, man.
But you're not sad doing it.
It's all right. It's good to be
tears rolling down your cheeks.
It's good to get some self-awareness once in a while. Hershey says it's going to be adding more manufacturing lines, hopes that it will be able to meet demand for Halloween and otherwise in the next couple of years. Other companies should be able to carry their weight to supply our nation's children in a couple of months here. One thing I wanted to address before we move on is your usual host, David, was concerned about an unusual angle. He's concerned about the level of discounted seasonal candy after Halloween.
Oh, and not being able to grab his weird like Brock's mix at a 50% discount?
Correct.
Well, because they're going to supposedly, that is one of the companies that's supposed to benefit from this, Brock's, which, I don't know, that might be their singular hope.
Yeah, I'm just, since David...
grim Halloween if they're replacing.
Yeah, since David is not here to defend himself, I'm just going to let all of you know that he has very poor taste in candy. Like the house
how
that
long
gives
did it
you
take us to get rid of the stuff he had last year? It took like 6 months.
Yeah,
right?
like the butterscotch discs and stuff. That's David's house.
And the result of that is his dentist has bought a vacation home on a lake based on his dental bills.
Sorry, David.
Not sorry.
Sorry, David. Our second most popular story this week: Jeep closes its only Chinese plant. Stellantis is making some changes across the Pacific. According to Bloomberg, the automaker has concerns over its Chinese operations, so CEO Carlos Tavares plans for the company to transition to an asset-light strategy. That strategy includes closing the only Jeep plant on Chinese soil and terminating a 12-year partnership with China's state-owned Guangzhou Automobile Group. The plant made the Jeep Cherokee, Renegade, Compass, and Grand Commander models, and the CEO says the closure was collateral damage from ongoing trade spats. He fears that political interference could cause the plant to fall victim to cross-sanctions if China acts on rising tensions with Taiwan. Tavares also said a major shift in the Chinese market is causing foreign vehicle sales to fall. Namely, the company is tipping the scales in favor of its domestic automakers. The Guangzhou Automobile Group says the real reason Stellantis is abandoning the market is because it, quote, failed due to a, quote, a lack of respect for customers in the Chinese automobile market. So who do we side with here, Jeep or Beijing?
First of all, Andy, how do you feel about the term Asset Light.
That
Sounds like the worst beer ever.
Asset Light.
I'd try it.
Oh, you just at board meetings and stuff. You just, hey, you guys want some Asset Light?
Pop the top on this one, huh? Andy, I just want to get your take on that term, though.
It's not. I've been a reporter for a long time. I've been covering B2B stuff for 8 years. Can't say I've come across that one before.
That's a new one. New way of saying we just want less stuff, which for a manufacturer means downsizing, closing stuff.
Okay.
By the way, great job in pronouncing that company name. Could you do that again?
Guangzhou?
Guangzhou.
I think that's right, but do not quote me on that.
It is now.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
right.
Good enough.
Yeah, I would think these type of operating environments have got to be difficult when things are going well. We know GM and others have had success in these 50-50 splits, which basically, once China opened up domestic manufacturing within their border for American companies, that's what it is. It's a 50-50 split with companies like this that are in part owned by the government. So you are dealing with a different type of operating environment. And I actually kind of agree with the comments made by the expert there in the Chinese auto market. I don't think that they were really paying attention here to what was going on with Stellantis. The vehicles that they're making there are SUVs. They're larger SUVs. When you look at the leading SUVs, if you will, that are selling in China, the top three are made by domestic Chinese manufacturers, and they're CUVs. They're smaller. They're crossover utility vehicles. Then you've got the Honda CR-V and the Tesla Model Y. The Tesla Model Y might be the largest of the top six because the sixth one is the Toyota RAV4. So these are all smaller types of SUVs. They're not Jeep Comanches. They're not the vehicles that they're making there, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I think they were kind of out of touch with the Chinese market. What I thought was kind of funny is in the sort of the ramp down, I think they actually made like 2 vehicles a month or something like that, which I thought was really interesting. Like, why do you bother? Is it like 2 guys on an assembly line just going station to station, bumping out because they had the parts or something? I mean, kind of like, how does that work? But so I think the writing's been on the wall for a while. What is interesting, if you look back a little bit, at one point, Stellantis was actually looking to have a bigger part in this business. They were trying to get an additional 25% ownership in it. They must have seen things definitely going sideways, was not going to be saved. I think they threw the relationship was probably difficult, but not the primary reason they ended up shutting this factory down.
I agree with Jeff. I think that maybe they're not saying just how precarious and difficult this relationship was. Obviously Stellantis was dealing with a big ball of wax considering how this was received by their partner. And I think it's a good reminder of how some of these global operations are viewed. You see these as like profitable opportunities, but they do come with some risks, as we see in this case. And, if you look at like not only the economic policies in China that favor these domestic automakers, which apparently didn't include this joint venture. And you wonder if, did Stellantis think it would, and then it ended up not? I don't know why, but obviously they're also worried about getting kind of tariffed into oblivion. If you look at the global stage politically right now, the situation with Taiwan is really heating up. Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan recently. It very, very much angered the Chinese government. They were doing missile tests. I don't see this as a situation that's improving. And so, when you add all that into this clearly contentious relationship that they have with GAG, which when their first response is to Stellantis saying they're shutting down is that Stellantis failed. Like, that's the words of a partner that was maybe blindsided or angry or both. This does not sound like a calculated business decision that involved both parties. So I think, to your point, I think that relationship was maybe in worse shape than was being articulated here.
But don't you think Stellantis is on the hook somewhat? Again, they were making the Cherokee, the Renegade, the Compass, and the Grand Commander. These are big vehicles.
Sure, but how much of an incentive was like the government providing to buy those? You said the top 3 were domestic automobiles. I mean, maybe people are buying them because they're getting a huge break on them. I don't know.
No, fair point.
Tavares, he said this decision, again referencing how troubled this relationship was. He said the decision was rooted in broken trust with its partner. And he mentioned the growing risk of operating factories in China because its politicians are increasing meddling in business. But he also admitted that the business is racking up losses. So
it's a mix.
It's I wonder if, I mean, this is the largest it's the largest market in the world, it's the largest car market in the world, so I wonder what kind of long-term ramifications this could have for Stellantis.
No, that's a good call. I mean, especially if they're trying to get into EVs. Again, China is the biggest market, like you said.
Well, they said they're still going to sell in China. They're just, all that has to be imported in, and I think that that's going to be less volatile than worrying about what the tariffs could do to them. I'm not sure how that will work out for them in the end. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. All right, our top story for the week. GM to punish exorbitant car flipping. Auto consumers are running into yet another roadblock, markups. Automakers have watched as high-demand vehicles are quickly resold by their initial buyers at markups described as exorbitant. GM is angry about it and has a plan, it says, to stabilize gouging that specifically targets consumers. In a letter to dealers, GM detailed plans to penalize consumers who try to flip their vehicles. If buyers of certain high-demand cars or trucks or whatever resell their vehicles within 12 months, they will be barred from placing future orders or reservations. The restrictions would apply to the 2023 Cadillac Escalade V, or 5, not sure, Chevrolet Corvette Z06, and GMC Hummer EV pickup and SUV. The president of GM North America said the practice both hurts the customer experience and damages GM's brand. How do we think this particular strategy is going to play out?
I think it's interesting when we kind of volley between the term consumer and the term unauthorized reseller, because I think that kind of how you see this person, this flipper, it might be how you view what GM is doing here. Because we've seen the response to this publicly seems like it's a little bit mixed. Like, on the one hand, you can see GM's point of view. They're really not, I don't think, targeting consumers, so to speak, rather people who are driving up the price of their goods on purposely. We've seen automakers punish dealers in the past for bad behavior, and that's sort of a similar consequence. They don't allow them the full inventory on a popular vehicle, so they can't get these high-demand vehicles. But once this is out of the dealer's hands, like, how do you continue to have a hand in how these brand new or almost brand new vehicles are priced? And I think maybe the answer is you don't. And the reason I say this is because I can't think of very many industries outside of automotive where a manufacturer could wield this type of control after the sale. I mean, it's kind of a problem with consumer goods right now, especially in marketplaces like Amazon, where products that are not authorized to be sold are being sold by third parties. But unless you're involved in like IP theft or any other kind of legal issue, Amazon doesn't do very much, and manufacturers really have very little recourse unless that seller is like illegally using their logo or something, running a commercial saying they're selling a car or whatever. So they have to get creative, and I think this is obviously GM's way of doing this, but it's unlikely that they can take any kind of legal action outside of what they're doing right now, which is sort of company-specific sanctions. CarScoops reported in April on a sale of a GMC Hummer EV, which is one of the vehicles that is included in this notice, that was resold with 800 miles on it for $275,000. And obviously, I think GM is seeing this kind of stuff as missed opportunity because, of course, they want to be selling new vehicles to these buyers who have this kind of money to spend on a car. But I also saw a Choco Taco on sale this week for $150. So that's the free market, right? Like, that's just, this is the business. I don't know. I just don't see what they can really do beyond what they're doing now.
Yeah, what kind of penalty are they going to leverage? What does that mean? So
they're saying, like, if you get busted doing this, you are not allowed to place orders for new vehicles again. And
for a year, right?
For
12 months.
For a year. And then they're also not letting if you sell it within a year.
Yeah.
They're not letting you place a new order.
Oh, okay.
And then
Got it.
they're also prohibiting certain warranty transfers to make that sell, I think, like less
Sure.
appealing.
Sure.
You lose your warranty, then you might be incentivized to buy new from your dealership and just wait for it. But people can't wait.
Apparently. No, I mean, this is really interesting. I mean, typically, it's kind of a joke, but you lose 15 to 20% of the value of a new car as soon as you drive it off the lot, right? That is traditionally, that's what Kelley Blue Book says, so on and so forth. It's just not the case anymore. I mean, just in looking at this, I went to where I've bought in the last couple cars, used a used car dealer, looked at 2021 models, what they're selling these vehicles for, and they've got like 35,000 plus miles. It's above the MSRP for when the car was new. So to your point, Anna, how do you regulate this? How do you control this? Because I get trying to support your dealers, but then you're essentially alienating your customers. Plus the process, what are they going to do, track VIN numbers and everything else? I mean, the logistical nightmare that this could represent and alienating people, especially if you get something wrong. I mean, it's competitive enough out there. You've got enough choices in terms of where to buy your vehicle. These are unique when you look at specifically the Corvette and the Hummer. I mean, there isn't a lot of comparable vehicles out there. But if you piss somebody off after they just spent $80,000 on a new vehicle, yeah, I think they might try to figure something else out. So I think GM is definitely walking a thin line here. I have a feeling it's a lot more posturing than anything they're actually going to do. I think they just want to get out there and say, hey guys, knock it off and see what happens, with that. One of the things I looked at too, I was kind of curious, if you had to guess, what vehicle do you think has the best resale value 2022? So it's from Kelley Blue Book. They put a top 10 in terms of the vehicles that retain their value the best over like course of 5 years. So you buy it this year, sell it in 5 years. Which one's going to be closest to what you bought it for? This is I think they're using a lot of factors here that are before stuff got weird.
Oh, okay.
Like it's all off the charts now.
Yeah.
Like who knows?
I would say maybe like a muscle car or a truck because they're just so popular.
I was going to guess the F-150.
They're all trucks. That's what I thought too. I would have thought the F-150 just because it's sold. That one is actually 8th. I was really surprised. The top ones are the Toyota Tundra. Is according to Kelley Blue Book, retains their value the best, followed by the GMC Sierra, the Toyota Tacoma, the Ford Maverick, which is like a newer, smaller size truck from Ford, and then the Corvette is tied for 4th. So, yeah, interesting mix of vehicles, but the Corvette again, what GM's trying to do in terms of people not selling it so quickly. So, yeah, it's the automotive. We've talked about this at length. It's just in a new era in terms of used cars and everything else.
This brought up a couple questions for me reading this story. The first was, doesn't it just mean that GM should be selling these cars for more than they already are? I know car prices are insane, but doesn't this mean that they're not insane enough if they're turning these around so fast?
It's a good question. I think, back to the fine line, I mean, they have to look at, though, not like pricing themselves out of the larger market, I mean, you would hate to lose they're so competitive, you'd hate to lose business to somebody else because you overdo it. But
I mean, it's more of a production issue, right? They just can't get enough of these vehicles out there. People are desperate for them. They don't want to go on the waiting list. They'll take something with more miles than they maybe would have bought before and pay a premium for it.
Okay. And the other one is Steve Carlisle, the president of GM North America, suggests this hurts their brand. I'm wondering if you have a bad experience with this, sure, but I mean, if they're having this kind of resale value, this kind of demand.
That's not the reason. The reason is they want that money.
Yes.
But he's not going to say that.
No, that sounds worse.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me a company who makes something wants the money for it?
It's so crazy, but I think that might be what we're looking at here.
This podcast has opened my eyes.
Every week it does, I think.
I was also wondering, since you brought it up, what you would pay for the world's last Choco Taco, if not $150.
Oh, this is a good story.
I'm glad you brought this up, Andy, because I found a Choco Taco over the weekend, and I had never had one before. And we were at the beach, and the Snack Shack at the beach had some Choco Tacos, and they were just at like regular $2 price or whatever. Man. So my husband and I bought 2 of the last Choco Tacos on Earth for for the average price of $2, and that was paying too much because those are terrible.
Really?
Yeah, and I was not expecting to think that or say that, but it like what?
Producer Alex.
This is a hot take apparently in the studio. Yeah, I'm getting some glares from the production side.
Anna's camera may have just shut off.
But
this podcast is over.
Maybe they were old. I don't know because no one cared about the Choco Taco until they said they were going to stop making it. So I think they've been in there for like 2 years.
That could be.
Just at the bottom of the cooler. They were just like super soggy shell and like it just was not very good.
I think I may have had one in my life, and that was probably 30 years ago.
Yeah.
There's just always, you see it and they're like, wow, that looks amazing, and then you see the drumstick, you're like, oh yeah.
Drumsticks are far superior, and it's like basically the same product except the drumstick is just much better.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
We should have organized this beforehand, but is there an advertisement read here?
Before we move on to In Case You Missed It, there is, yes.
Oh.
So now,
before we get to In Case You Missed It,
we have another word from our sponsor, Red Zone.
Manufacturers are facing extraordinary challenges today. With labor shortages, supply chain disruptions, and a changing workforce, complex industrial technology doesn't cut it on the front line. What's needed is a new way of working that will not only meet throughput goals, but change the shop floor culture to one of winning, where every worker feels they play a part in achieving the company's goals for success. What's needed is Red Zone, the connected workforce solution.
I can.
okay.
All right. Red Zone's connected workforce software solution enables manufacturers to empower frontline teams in production, maintenance, and quality to contribute their full potential and achieve company goals around productivity and throughput. Red Zone software enables manufacturers, big and small, to boost their plant's productivity, increase employee engagement, and lower turnover. Thanks, Red Zone. All right. We're going to move on to In Case You Missed It, and I think we should start with Andy.
All right, these are some stories that didn't get up into the top 5 of our rankings that we still thought were worthy of sharing with our audience here. This story is about a company called I should have looked up how to pronounce this. Esri.
Yeah, looks like it.
A digital mapping and analytics company in Redlands, California, in Silicon Valley. I don't know if that's right either. It might be down in Southern California. It's in California. Here we go. The company this week entered into an agreement with the U.S. Department of Labor to resolve allegations that it paid 176 female employees less than their male counterparts in 2017. According to the department, the company systematically discriminated against 143 female software development engineers and 33 female quality assurance engineers. The company agreed to pay $2.3 million in back wages and interest to those affected employees. The company will make some of the standard changes in response to those violations, better training, program reviews, but the only reason that they were caught was because the company is a federal contractor. They are prohibited from discriminating against in employment decisions based on race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. The DOL's Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs recently launched the Class Member Locator to identify applicants or workers who may be entitled to monetary relief and or consideration for job placement. So I mean, I don't have a ton to add to this story here other than that it's not great. I was curious about, I've been seeing more calls just kind of out there in the ether. I'm on the internet probably too much, but calls for salary transparency, whereas within companies you disclose what everybody makes. And I'm not entirely sure where I fall on it. It'd probably do more good than harm, but I was wondering what you guys think about that in the wake of stories like this.
I mean, it goes without saying, like, this is frustrating to see, obviously, with 3 daughters entering the workforce, the professional workforce, in the next 5 years, 10 years, depending on how college goes. You don't want to see stuff like this. But what is encouraging is that the company is looking to make good on it. It's frustrating they had to go before a federal moderator and everything else to get to this number, but they're doing it and they're trying to make good. And hopefully this establishes sort of a benchmark for others to see this, realize I've never understood how this begins in the first place. I guess how do you see 2 people coming in, one's male, one's female, and just assume you can automatically lowball the female? I guess maybe I'm naive. I just never understood how that even starts.
I think the idea is you tend to just kind of naturally give preferential treatment to people who you're familiar with their experiences, maybe, or that look like you.
So it's guys hiring guys, so you just pay them more. I mean, that could be across the board for all sorts of wage disparity or hiring disparity issues. Yeah, and I mean, I'm always the one who says we want government out of our business and should not be involved so much. But then you see stuff like this, and it's like, geez, do it right, and then they don't have to get involved. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this can be hard to prove because there's a lot that companies can say around, like, oh, experience, and this is why we selected the salary. But they use the word systematically here, and it looks like they were able to prove this, pretty resoundingly. So that means, yeah, somebody is, whether they believe they are doing it or not. They were, yeah. But I think you're right, Andy. I think that there's people in positions of power, and they just they have too much flexibility on this stuff, and they give a wage.
It's probably not even malicious. It's just natural.
Some people, I think, in the back of their mind, non-maliciously, just assume that the male is the breadwinner and they should be making more money because it's a family wage, and then the woman's income is secondary or whatever. And obviously, we know that that's pretty egregious, but it still happens. So
gross,
and we hate it. Knock it off, Esri. It was a good guess that it was in Silicon Valley. It's an analytics company. I think you can guess that it's in Silicon Valley, right? I don't know. I don't know where Redlands is.
I was thinking of Redwood City, which I know is in Silicon Valley, but I don't know about Redlands. I think that might be elsewhere. Are we going to find out here?
I have the internet.
All right.
At all times. Okay. San Bernardino County.
It was Southern California. San Bernardino County, near-ish Los Angeles, and by that we mean 3 hours drive, probably.
It's
3 hours drive to get 20 miles.
It's got a Country Inn and Suites, and it's got a Home Depot.
Sounds awesome. And this company that discriminates against women.
Used
to.
Allegedly.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have, and in case you missed it, that I'm hoping no one missed because it was too hilarious.
Too good.
But if you did, Purina is planning to open a cat food inspired restaurant. Yes, you heard that right. I know that this is purely marketing, but I picked this story because it was too hilarious to not talk about. So Purina has announced a new restaurant concept that's inspired by its Fancy Feast brand of wet cat food. Oh, I said wet cat food. Titled Gatto Bianco by Fancy Feast. It opens on August 11th for 2 nights only in Brooklyn. Guests will enjoy a tasting menu that takes its inspiration from a new line of Fancy Feast dishes called medleys. So probably medleys, I think, is just like a bunch of junk mixed together, is what a medley is. According to a recent press release, the menu was developed by the cat food brand's in-house chef, Amanda Hasner, and acclaimed restaurateur Cesar Casella. So Hasner says that Gatto Bianco's dishes help cat owners understand how their cats experience food, from flavor to texture to form, in a way that only Fancy Feast can. Ugh. It says that it hopes to share with cat lovers the delight that it brings to felines with every meal. And I know I'm falling right into their trap by talking about this, but this story was like catnip to me. It was too funny. But I've said this before, like, I'm really having fun with the marketing that has developed as a result of social media and trending and viral campaigns. I mean, we saw a job application campaign soliciting a chief, was like a taco officer or something, or we saw like a dog beer tester, a chief donut maker, which was like somebody they wanted to drive cars around in circles.
Dodge.
Dodge, yeah. And I just think it's fun that when companies are taking a lighter approach and taking a lighter look at their business, and the marketing campaigns that are kind of taking a viral concept that's weird and it works. I don't know. I mean, it's absolutely revolting, this restaurant concept.
You. Okay, you brought it back. I was a little worried there.
No, I don't want to be inside the restaurant. I want to laugh at it from the outside and just even food that's like reminiscent of canned cat food is just like horrifying. But they know that, right? You know that they know that. They're poking fun. They're just having fun. And
do we?
Yes. Because if they thought people really wanted to eat that food, they would do more. I don't know. This is a pop-up restaurant with like they're taking like 4 tables a night for 2 nights. I mean, it's like 16 people will eat there. It's not a real thing. It's just a pretend flimsy marketing campaign, but it's funny. I don't know. We made the video that we made had this really weird cat in it, and the cat's face just looks so happy about this, and it made me happy. I don't know. I'm not even really a cat person, but that just the whole thing made me laugh. So.
One of the things, I think they have 3 dishes or small plates or whatever we're calling it.
Small plates.
A couple of them looked acceptable. The main course looked absolutely horrifying.
It's just like chopped
It
up
probably tastes good because they're.
mince with like some peas in it or something.
It looks like British food.
Ugh.
And also cat food.
I want nothing inspired by pet food. And don't talk about texture. If you're a cat food maker, that's disgusting.
Like, you need to know what your cat is getting in terms of texture.
I get a pretty good feel when you look at it and it plops out into the bowl and they go nuts for it.
Oh.
It's like,
and like the gelatinous like finish.
Do you think they're worried about people showing up and behaving like their cats when they show up to eat? Like showing up an hour early for their reservation and screaming?
you just start circling the table.
Well, because you know that the people who are like, yes, I need to be there, are really cat people. Like real cat people. I don't.
Yeah.
Jeff, I hope
need to
you
move on
enjoy.
from this.
I
This
hope
is-
you enjoy your dinner next week at Gatto Bianco by Fancy Feast.
Where else for Brooklyn could you open this pop-up restaurant?
Nowhere.
Yeah,
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just clarifying. So mine, in case you missed it, had nothing to do with cat food.
Too bad.
It is a story about the National Labor Relations Board telling some mine workers in Alabama that they need to pay their coal company over $13 million effectively in restitution for going on strike. So basically, the story starts in 2015. This coal plant was owned by Walter Energy. It was sold to a different company called Warrior Met. The business was in dire straits. The workers made a bunch of concessions in terms of pay, healthcare benefits, etc. Over the course of time, Warrior Met did a good job in bringing this thing back. They were able to. They saved what the employers did save the company about $1.1 billion over the past 5 years. And since 2017, Warrior Met has paid over $1.5 billion in dividends to its shareholders, and its CEO is getting about $4 million a year. So basically, the company got back on its feet. The workers are like, hey, remember us? Mm-hmm. And the company said, no, we got a deal in place. We're not giving you any more. They went on strike a little bit more than a year ago. And in the course of going on strike, basically they had some over-enthusiastic protest or picket line folks. They damaged some things, did some bad stuff. They damaged some vehicles. They actually damaged some pipelines and some other infrastructure at the facility.
Yikes.
They were wrong, okay? No doubt about that. They went back to Warrior Met and said, look, we will concede the fact that we screwed up here and that we owe you some money for restitution on these things. They went to the NLRB. The NLRB came back and said they owed them $13 million because in addition to the things that were ruined, they also wanted $12.8 million in lost revenue that the plant experienced while the workers were on strike. Guess what? The union didn't really care for this. They said it's like 33 times more than they anticipated the NLRB coming back to them with. So basically, they didn't see why they would be responsible for going on strike and being responsible then for the revenues that was lost as a result. This is sort of unprecedented for the NLRB to make this type of ruling, and I think it could set a really interesting precedent if companies can get restitution for basically revenue once workers go on strike. We're talking about a coal plant here too, so it's also an industry that's already kind of under the gun from a regulatory perspective, from a labor management perspective, from an employee treatment perspective. So again, these workers really made a lot of concessions, helped the company get back on their feet, went on strike to get those things back, and now the company's asking for basically $13 million to make up for all the revenue they've lost in the past year. For the NLRB to come out with that judgment was shocking to everybody. And like I said, I think it just sends a really interesting precedent. And where does this stop? Because they didn't offer a lot of depth in terms of why. Mm-hmm. This was just basically the union said, we know we owe these guys some stuff. The company said, yeah, you owe us this much, and the NLRB agreed with them.
So do you know, did they have a no strike clause in their contract?
No.
That's crazy. So if you quit your job, can someone come after you and say, like, we lost revenue because you quit and we had to replace you and we had downtime or whatever? I mean, to your point, like, where does it end?
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And again, to see how this all kind of pans out, again, these workers have been, on strike for more than a year. So it seems like Warrior Med is digging their heels in, because even though they lost revenue, they still had huge earnings last year. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one to watch, again, just from seeing how it impacts other labor union negotiations and how much the NLRB is involved.
As though workers don't risk enough by going on strike in the first place, you know,
Right.
and now they have this to deal with.
And kind of straight down the middle on a lot of these, but man, these workers gave up a ton. 1.5 billion in revenue, or 1.1 billion in benefits. They just want back what they had because the company's back on its feet.
Yeah.
So kind of a disappointing situation there.
Yeah. Well, and you think, like, too, you're a coal company, so you don't really run the risk of, like, bad public PR because nobody knows where their coal comes from.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, how does it risk their brand? It really doesn't. So they might as well be aggressive if they're gonna. But like you said, risk. These workers already put themselves out there, and then also they work in coal mines. That's like a very dangerous job. Like, people should be able to not do that if they don't want to.
Basically the counteroffer was $1.50 an hour raise for a company that's made seen their stock prices increase by over 250% over the last 2 years. So
wow.
Yeah. So,
well, thanks for bringing that one up, Jeff. I mean, really,
on a positive note, right?
Should have done the cat food thing last.
Yeah, we should have closed with cat food, so you could sleep on that tonight, everyone. Cat food.
Better than coal mines. So
that's about it. We have time for some final thoughts, I think. Andy, do you have anything you want to put out into the world before we go today?
I don't know if it's a supply chain issue or what, but my mechanic is having some real trouble getting the right part for my car. It's been like a month with this thing. I would either, one, like my car. Actually, I'd like two things in concert. One, I'd like my car back. Two, I would like reliable public transit because I can't go anywhere. I need to borrow my wife's car for everything. That is my complaint for this week.
Do you have to go in her purse to get her keys?
No, she hangs it on the moose hook outside the garage door.
Because that would be the worst part of that whole thing for me.
Yeah.
My wife will say that all the time. It's in my purse. I'm like, I do not want to go in there.
There are seven pockets, and I'll inevitably pick the last one.
No one, every man in the world, when you say it's in my purse, hands you your purse.
Yes.
What is the big deal?
It is the most, I don't know.
We don't know where stuff goes.
What do you think's going to happen? Like, your hand's going to get bitten off in there?
We don't know where stuff goes. That's the whole thing.
Oh, my God. Ridiculous.
Not like a cat food restaurant.
No, that I can get behind.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Well, good luck, man. Jeez.
Hopefully next week. Knock on wood, or whatever this is.
Yeah.
Yeah, knock on this. My final thought this week is that I know that I was pretty bullish last week about winning the lottery. That turns out to not happen, so I'll be here for a while.
Pretty excited
Hooray!
about that. Yay! Couple final thoughts. First of all, I've got two of my daughters having birthdays, one today, or that we're recording, the other on Monday. So when you hear this, just think of me when you're having a drink or saying your prayers, because I will have a 19, 17, and 16-year-old daughters. That's a lot of feelings, folks, just so you know. But happy birthday to all of them. They're wonderful, and have some good times this weekend. The other thing is, I've been listening. I was talking to this. I know I've been talking to everybody in the office about this, but when I grew up, I was really into wrestling. Like from probably, 8 to 14, super into it. Then I got into it again kind of when I was in college with Stone Cold, Steve Austin, and all that. And now a lot of these guys have podcasts. And they are fascinating when they talk about stuff behind the business and all that kind of stuff. Really interesting. So, two I would highly recommend is Oh, You Didn't Know? By the Road Dogg, Brian James. And also My World with Jeff Jarrett. Those are two really interesting. If you're into wrestling at all, I'd highly recommend those two podcasts. When you're not listening to this one.
Yeah,
this one first.
Prioritize.
Then maybe the wrestling stuff.
Learn something, then be entertained.
Exactly, Andy. Priorities.
And be entertained, then be only entertained.
Yes. We'll workshop it. We'll get that right.
That's our tagline. Do we have trivia this week, or are we still taking
And I kind of, thinking back to what David said, it's not about the type of question. I want to come up with stuff that you can't just Google and find the answer to.
Okay.
Kind of takes away from it. So that's what I'm still working on.
You just need more time.
Wow. Sorry.
I'm just asking.
I do. I need a little more time.
Okay.
Man, so demanding.
It just seemed a little defensive, that's all.
I'm working really hard on it, okay?
All right, Jeff. Forget it.
Good.
Forget I said anything.
Whatever.
Please
Are we
make
done yet?
sure to like, subscribe, share the podcast. And again, to email us, you can reach us at Andy, Anna, or Jeff at IN.com. Or if you want to troll David for him not being here, that's David at IN.com.
Yes.
Email the podcast in the subject line. Again, you can subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters to get the podcast in your inbox as soon as it goes out. So look for that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Today, we appreciate you joining us. And that's the Today in Manufacturing podcast. We'll see you next week.